Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to be doing a special selection today, which is where one of you tell me exactly what kind of poor taste in music I need to listen to today. Today's request comes at us from Gregory. Special selection request song title is Call Me Killer by the band iRobot. Let's dive into this, I suppose, and see what this band's bringing to the table. Interesting, I was given a Spotify link, but I couldn't listen on Spotify. It's blocked from them. From my side, it looks like they don't have anything released on Spotify, even though I saw the link. I saw the title, I saw the track. Very interesting. It does have a description for the band, but no material release. So I had to find it on YouTube from the record label Immigrant Sun Records. Let's dive in, see what iRobot is bringing to the table. Yeah, switching off to a 5 here, really nice. Really nice bass presence. Yeah, very cool bass counterpoint against the vocals on top of chord progressions from the guitars. So 13/8 for this section. It's over? No, oh. I need more of that. Yeah, that was awesome. That is right up my alley, the exact kind of music I personally like to listen to. But it also does it in a way that I feel uh, works well even outside of it, and even pushes a bit towards a proggier side of emo, kind of bringing in a Mathier side to it. I'm curious when this came out. I don't know if this is going. Yeah, that ain't gonna answer me. Primarily because it's formed in '97. Looks like this album came out in 2002. Oh, that's a compilation album of everything they've done. This track specifically came off of the split with Cable Car Theory in 2000. So the thing is, it does feel a little forward facing, and I think that's awesome. It definitely has ties to some of the mid to late '90s beginnings of emo and more particularly screamo scenes, but it is a bit more rhythmically interesting than a lot of bands would have taken from that scene, primarily in its use of juxtaposing phrases, whether it's the back and forth of our beginning, the noisy versus the ambient, the noisy versus the ambient, or it's the shift to the incomplete 5/4 or 5/8. Yeah, we're gonna call it a 5/8. Otherwise, the tempo is gonna be ridiculous. Um, Anyways, the 5 beat phrase, we'll call it that, that goes on in our third section, followed by, we have the clean vocal section, and then the 13/8 that comprises our penultimate section before heading out to another contrasty atmospheric moment to push against the heavier, noisier parts. There are a lot of moments in here where they have absolutely no problem just completely doing the opposite, changing up phrasing, changing up time signatures, and I think it goes a long way into creating a song that is going to be more memorable than many of their screamo contemporaries. Scrams, for those who aren't a fan of the screamo title. It it is everything I love about this style of music with a bit more. It's screamo plus. I don't know if I'd go so far to call it proggy screamo. I like the plus. It implies there's a bit more, but we're not multiplying. We're not making a massive leap away from it. Um, and so it keeps it interesting while still mostly retaining the blueprint of the sound. So, what is that sound? It's noise, a lot of it. There's a lot of screaming, there's a lot of just random tonality stuff. The bass line in the clean vocal section kind of doesn't belong there. Like, I really love what it's doing. It's neat having that counterpoint against the vocals. Just having the bass do something interesting in and of itself is a really nice change of pace, but having that counterpoint against the vocals is nice. Usually that would be given to a guitar, but both of our guitars were doing chords there. But it does feel rhythmically, I don't think it lines up very well with what the vocals are doing. Note wise, I think it's fine. Provides some nice harmony and intervals. Just no, or sorry, rhythmically, it's a bit much, and it creates noise. And so there's just a lot of sections in this track that are they're noisy. It's things that are a bit much, whether it's a bit much harmonically, a bit much volume wise, a bit much vocally. These vocals aren't going to be for everyone. It's an acquired taste. I've developed that taste over years of exploring similar musics. I don't have a problem with it. I kind of like it even. It's a bit much for even me at times. It really goes for some shrieky, shrill uh harshes up there, but for the most part I'm fine with it. But even that's going to be a bit much for some. Um But yeah, so not only just a lot of sound is coming at you all the time, but the production, as is with stuff like this, which I think is primarily going to be of underground group that never quite got discovered. Their release EP with 4 tracks on Rate Your Music has 60 ratings on it. That is not a lot. Their split that this track came off of only has 17 ratings, and their compilation that's it has a few live tracks. They don't even look like they're live. Oh, a couple are live versions. But there's some tracks on here that are live only. They might have never recorded them, and the only thing they have are the live versions of. And there's some tracks in here that aren't part of their EP or split, so the compilation's interesting. It seems to be the definitive disc for them. It has everything they've done, whether it was recorded or not. It only has 93 ratings. This is not a very popular band. I'm going to assume that sometime after 2002, they split up, went their separate ways. I don't even know if they got back into music. Well, there are two other bands that are related to them, but uh, anyways, I'm kind of getting a little off topic here. The idea is that I believe they were underground. Um, and so, part of that is going to be weaker production, especially in, oh, they disbanded in 99. Wow. So they put out a split and a compilation after they were disbanded. That's interesting. Maybe there was just one or two members left over who wanted to keep working on things, finish stuff up. I don't know. Anyways, what I'm getting at here is they probably didn't have a lot of cash for recording studio time. And, this was the late 90s, not exactly like bedroom producers were an everyday phenomenon. So they might not have had the hardware and equipment to do this at home and make it sound nice and all that. And it could also just be a replication of the sound. A lot of bands sounded like this. But what I'm getting at is that the production is very lo-fi. There's a lot of compression all over the place. There's not a lot of clarity to the song itself. It is very fuzzy, very muddy. Instruments kind of step on each other's toes all over the place. Not compositionally, just sonically. There's a lot of clash and crossover where things really shouldn't be, and it makes a muddy track. That just adds to the noisiness of all of it. It lends itself well into the song itself. It isn't so much as a restriction, though it might have been, a financial restriction, a time restriction, whatever. It might not have been what they wanted, but the end result, I think, is that the production pairs well with the songs. Could the songs sound better with a different production? Sure, I might even enjoy those versions, but as it stands, I do think that they are rather, uh, they mesh well. There's some productions that I don't think aid the composition at all, and sometimes those are intentional choices. So whether this was intentional or not, I do think the production is a nice match. Um, Musically, it's interesting because this is linear, and I think part of that is due to the 2 minute runtime. They really don't have a lot of time to do anything repetitive. If they had done a verse, chorus, then that would have been the whole song. And they obviously had more they wanted to do here. So we have our A section, which is the back and forth, and then we have a pure scream section, which is the 5/8 section. Then our chorus, which has some clean singing in it. Um, then there was another heavy section that was the 13, and then our outro, which was acoustic. So what is that? A, B, C, D, E. Yeah, 5 sections. No repetition. But it all feels cohesive too. The transitions are harsh between most of them. But the emotion, I think, is all here. The atmospheric sections tend to lean more towards a nostalgia, an introspection that I think is interesting because it contrasts with a here and now tension. The way that I feel the harsh vocals coming out and the noisiness and abrasiveness and rigidity of the guitar and drum work primarily tell me that there is an anxiety to this. And it's almost like the mind wanders for a bit. It might just be a moment of calm, but it's always contrasted with a this is the problem now. This makes me tense now. And then we contrast it with these more floaty, evocative, atmospheric sections, whether that's at the beginning where we juxtapose these rapidly and consecutively, or towards the end where we have a section that is heavy and then an elongated section that is more atmospheric that takes us out of the track. They are in opposition of each other, but it also feels like a tug of war, a push and pull between these two mental states. The feeling of freedom and release and relaxation versus tension and anxiety, and how they interweave and inform information about this character or this person or the singer, whatever the lyrics are about. Speaking of the lyrics, I think that's about all I wanted to say here, so let's dive into them. A quick note, I mentioned that this comes off of the Immigrant Son Records YouTube channel. It does not. It is an Immigrant Son Records archive. Someone is trying to document and keep track of all of these lost CDs. And that might be why they're not on Spotify, at least in the US. It could be another region that the track was linked to me from, which is why they could access it, but I couldn't. Um, licensing agreements and stuff like that. But if Immigrant Son isn't around anymore and they're not available to distribute these albums to Spotify, that would explain why they're not on it. Regardless, this is an archivist project to keep all of these things still listenable, which I fully appreciate. I am a huge fan and supporter of media archival, whether it's music or film, TV, video games, or even traditional art, paintings and sculpture and stuff, any sort of way to capture and allow future generations to experience said art. The lyrics are basically about not falling for lies. That's like 90% of the lines. It's so vague about what exactly the lie is. It makes a little bit of a head nod. Hey, that over there is what I'm talking about. At the very, very end. But everything else is just burn the flag of deception that promises bliss. False promises. It's all lies. You were told a lie. I never believed the fables. Your leader will vanquish. It's all very vague ideas. It's interesting then to contrast that with our very first stanza. I can't believe you're not afraid. Terror shrouds my body. We are not immortal, and this evil does exist in the form of a weak human. It's very, very interesting juxtaposition there. The stoicness, the unmoving, I will not fall for these lies. You have. It's a very straightforward stance to take throughout most of the track that feels exceptionally confident and proud. And then we have this section that says, I am terrified of this evil. We are not immortal. We must be afraid of this. And it shows a weakness that the rest of the track doesn't. And I think it's a really cool juxtaposition there. What these lies are spoken about in the final stanza. And once again, it's a little bit of a head nod. It's not really telling you exactly what it is. It's kind of pointing you in a general direction, and you still have to look over there and figure out what particularly they might be pointing at. Says, shut your eyes and abandon this alternate lifestyle that became our mainstream disease. Now, in the late 90s, I was barely coming up as a teenager. I would have been about 10, 11, 12 maybe when this came out. I say 2000 for this album. Yep, 2000. So I would have been 12. I would have been in my tween years. I will tell you, I was not worried about the state of living, societal concepts, any changes to society, anything like that. I have no idea what in particular this song is supposed to be speaking about, what this alternative lifestyle is that he perceives as a disease. And maybe it has nothing to do with social criticism at the time at all. It's very possible that this is part of a concept album and it's talking about part of the story that's going on in. Actually, no, it came off of a split, didn't it? Yep, there's not a concept album out. This is just one of two tracks. So yeah, it's to be read in isolation then, presumably. It's possible the other track on their split answers some of the questions I have, but as it stands, it's rather vague, and without knowing the specificities of presumably, yeah, they came from New York, so presumably a U.S. social criticism from the late 90s, early 2000s, it just seems to be a song about contrarianism, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. That's a neutral thing. I know being contrarian is sort of an insult these days, uh, but sometimes standing against the pack is what needs to happen. Um, it really depends on what the stances are. Being contrarian for contrarian's sake, though, is usually just it's just such a boring stance to have. But he seems to have such passion for this that I feel like there's something at stake here, and the opening stanza speaks to that entirely. There is something at stake. There's an evil present around us. That evil seems to be some sort of alternate lifestyle. I don't know what that is. The mainstream disease. Uh, but yeah, I lack the experience, knowledge, information to, I think, fully dissect what this is about. So I'm going to turn the mic over to y'all. Those are my thoughts on iRobot's Call Me Killer. I'm real interested in this. I'm going to check out more of them, I think. As is anytime y'all give me some old school emo. It's always good stuff. What are your thoughts, though? Perspectives, comments, opinions? What do you take? What is your take on all of this? Let me know in the comments section. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. It takes you to this menu right here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. That wraps it up for today. I'll be back tomorrow, though, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC. As usual, we're going to continue on with this week's spooky music theme and check out another special selection. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.